When I became a mother, I failed every step of the way. And those failures led to a severe postpartum depression, which landed me in various loony bins for the first couple of months of my child's life. This was not how I envisioned becoming a mother. I figured I'd be just like all those women in the movies, which is where I learned everything about life. In films, the mom and the child bond immediately. She gazes upon him with tears of joy and says, "Well, hello there, you beautiful boy." Will I also gaze upon my child with tears? Tears of profound and hopeless terror. Who is this creature, and how the hell am I supposed to keep him alive? I had never held or seen a newborn baby before, but I had bought in to all the feminist dogmas about childbirth. First and foremost, it has to be natural. That's right. No drugs, no episiotomy, no C-section, no induced labor. If you do any of those things, your child will have lower intelligence, learning disabilities, seizures, and it will be your fault. Because poor little you just couldn't handle the most excruciating pain that Satan ever devised. The real truth of the miracle of childbirth is, it's a miracle that anyone who's been through it is willing to do it again. Well, the labor went on for too long. They couldn't get him out. I couldn't push him out. So they had to put me under for forceps delivery. I failed at natural childbirth, and it probably created a special needs kid. After the birth, we moved up to my father. Benny is Danish, so we were living in Denmark at the time. I gave birth in a foreign country, which was a very bad idea. And after the birth, we moved up to my father-in-law's weekend house because, again, from the movies, I had this fantasy of strolling in beautiful nature with my laughing baby. Well, the house was cramped and uncomfortable. The nature outside was cold and windy and dark and rainy because this is Denmark after all. And there was no strolling possible because I was too overwhelmed to figure out how to dress myself in the morning. Plus, I could not stop crying. Now, if you happen to be planning a nervous breakdown, I have a word of advice for you. Do not have it in Denmark. That's because Danes, like the Brits, consider strong emotions to be bad manners. Danish women are stoic and competent and capable, and I was fragile and frightened and exhausted. And my worst failure was I couldn't figure out the breastfeeding. I was sure I was doing it wrong. It got me nervous, so we switched over to formula. And again, in our society, breastfeeding is a life-giving, sacred, health-giving ritual. Feeding your baby formula is child abuse. I had now probably given my special needs kid an incurable autoimmune disease. I am the worst mother who ever lived. They find me a Jewish shrink, thinking there'll be some kind of cultural connection. And he says, "What are all these foolish tears about? Go home, light the Shabbos candles, start preparing for Rosh Hashanah." I've never done any of that stuff. Why is he talking to me like I'm a character in Fiddler? And then he repeats what everyone's been saying. Motherhood is instinctive. Nature will show you what to do. Well, when nature showed me what to do, I must have slept through the class. I keep crying, so Tevye the shrink decides that I need to be institutionalized. The psych ward is in a creepy old Dickensian hospital in Copenhagen. None of the other patients speak to me, partly because of the language barrier, partly because Danes do not speak to strangers. Every day, all the other inmates bathe themselves. They make their beds neatly. They wash out their undies in the sink, and they change the water in their flower vases, while I lie there, unwashed, in my rumpled sheets, sucking on Marlboros, while the flowers in my bedside table wither and die from neglect. Not only am I a failure at being a mother, I am a failure at being a patient in an insane asylum. Well, I am not getting any better, so we fly back to New York and the psychiatric unit at Mount Sinai Hospital. My roommate is a novelist whose husband was kind of a famous theater critic, and there's a gay guy on the floor who is totally obsessed with Judy Garland movies. Finally, my kind of people. In group therapy, we are encouraged to express whatever's on their minds, and so I ask if anybody knows the most painless and efficient way to kill yourself. Now, apparently, the other patients have also given some thought to this subject, and they come up with some really cool ideas. It's the most fun I've had in months, until the shrink puts a stop to the conversation. For some strange reason, she feels that my topic is counter-therapeutic. But by some miracle, I do actually start to get better, mostly because the raging hormonal changes brought on by the pregnancy have begun to subside, and I'm starting to feel like myself again. You know, we like to think that we are in charge of our emotions, but more often than not, it's that old devil biochemistry that's running things. One night, some friends stopped by to visit, and they entertained me with funny stories of their messy lives, and the friendship and the laughter suddenly makes me think that maybe life is worth living after all. The next day, Betty brings baby Jono for a visit. I pick him up, and he smiles at me. And just like in the movies, I say, "Well, hello there, you beautiful boy." It's time to go home. We have a domestic helper for 2 weeks, and I finally get all the care and guidance and instruction I should have had at the beginning. I never needed therapy or drugs or hospitalization. All I needed was a servant. Of course, I never told Jonathan about any of this, but when he was 17, my demented mother-in-law accidentally spilled the beans. I tearfully tried to explain to him, "Honey, it wasn't that I didn't love you. It was hormonal changes, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah." And he goes, Okay, why are you making such a big deal about this? I've always known you were a nutcase. What's for dinner? So I started out with absolutely no talent for motherhood. And in spite of all the birthing rules I broke, And in spite of all the nursing rules I broke, Jonathan grew up to be a smart and healthy and perfect man. People always say to me, "Oh, you and your son, you're so close, you have such a good relationship. How did you do that?" And I laugh to myself, little do they know